So here's a scoop for the Walking Dead fam. Greg Nicotero, yeah, the guy who's basically been behind the scenes of all things Walkers since day one, recently sat down at Comic Con and talked a little about what's coming up in Daryl Dixon season 3. You know how that spin-off's been doing its own thing lately? Well, season 3 is taking Daryl and Carol all the way to Spain, and apparently they'll be dealing with a bunch of new characters and whatever crazy apocalypse chaos Europe has going on. Now, here's the fun part. Spain isn't just some random setting. Hardcore fans might remember the comic The Walking Dead, the alien, the one that introduced Rick Grimes' long lost brother, Jeffrey. Yep, that guy. Turns out Jeffrey was chilling in Spain during all the Walker madness, and ever since that comic dropped, people have been wondering if he'd ever pop up in the live action universe. So, during an interview, Nicotero admitted that Jeffrey Grimes has been brought up while working on Daryl's show. Like, they've actually had conversations about it behind the scenes. But he said that as of now, there's not really a push to bring him in. Doesn't mean it's never happening, it's just not happening yet. He was kind of vague, saying something like, it's come up, but there's not been any real interest right now. So that's not a hard no, but it's definitely not a yes either. One of those we'll see kind of situations. Nicotero also mentioned that they're trying to keep Daryl's story kind of clean and separate, his own thing, basically. Sure, they've sprinkled in familiar faces like Carol, but they don't want every spin-off to just be a reunion tour. Daryl's journey is supposed to feel a bit more personal, like he's carving out his own path in this massive universe. That said, Daryl Dixon season 3 is still going to be packed with fresh energy. They've got some new faces joining the cast. No one's saying exactly what their roles are yet, but it sounds like they'll be important to whatever wild stuff Daryl and Carol are about to get into. The vibe is definitely shaping up to be its own survival saga with a European twist. As for Jeffrey Grimes, yeah, it looks like that door's shut for now. Rick never even brought him up in the main show, not once, so the idea of suddenly making him canon in live action might feel a little out of nowhere. And honestly, the showrunners probably don't want to throw in Rick's brother unless they've got a really strong reason to do it. Randomly introducing him just because they're in Spain wouldn't hit the same unless it fits into a bigger arc. Still, fans can keep a tiny bit of hope alive. Nicotero didn't completely shut it down, which means there's always a chance they're saving Jeffrey for a different project, maybe a future spin-off. A surprise appearance on the line? Who knows? It's kind of like they're keeping him in their back pocket just in case they find a perfect storyline to drop him into. But yeah, for now, don't hold your breath on to seeing Rick's mysterious brother show up next season. The Daryl Dixon show seems locked in on doing its own thing without diving too deep into Rick's family tree, at least not yet. Honestly, it kind of makes sense they're not rushing to bring in Rick's brother. Like, this universe has always been huge, and there are a ton of characters they could explore, but when it comes to The Walking Dead, they usually don't bring someone in unless it really makes the story stronger. So while fans are definitely curious about Jeffrey Grimes, the writers probably don't want to force him in just because there's a comic connection. They're trying to tell a solid story first, not just toss in fan service. And if you think about it, Rick himself never once even hinted at having a brother during the entire original series, not even a throwaway line. So if Jeffrey did pop up now, they'd kinda have to backtrack and explain why Rick never mentioned him, especially with how close knit the group became. It'd be weird for Rick to be like, oh yeah, my brother's probably alive in Europe, and just never bring it up while fighting for survival day in, day out. But still, the comic he came from, The Alien, is actually a fan favorite. It's short, emotional, and adds some serious depth to the Grimes family. So there's definitely interest from longtime fans who've read the comics and want to see more connections between the different corners of the universe. Bringing Jeffrey in would definitely shake things up, especially now that Daryl's overseas and already venturing into new territory. Plus, it's not like the show hasn't introduced brand new characters or brought in deep cuts from the comics before. Like, remember how Negan became a massive part of the series? He started off as the insane villain and ended up being one of the most layered and interesting characters by the end. So yeah, if they ever do bring in Jeffrey, they could totally give him a cool story arc, especially since we know almost nothing about him beyond that one comic. Another thing to keep in mind is that Carol being back in the mix adds a whole new dynamic to the series. Her relationship with Daryl has always been one of the emotional anchors of the show. Having her with him in Spain means we're not just getting another solo Daryl adventure. It's more about these two veterans of the apocalypse surviving and adapting in a whole new setting. That alone is going to make for some solid storytelling. And let's be real, Spain opens up a lot of opportunities: new language, new culture, new survivors, maybe even new types of threats. Walkers are universal, but every country would deal with the outbreak in their own way. So instead of looping in a character like Jeffrey just because he happens to also be in Spain, it makes sense that the showrunners would want to explore what this region's apocalypse looks like on its own terms. Still, it's kind of cool that Nicotero even admitted that they've talked about Jeffrey. Like, that shows he's not completely forgotten. It wouldn't be shocking if he randomly pops up later, especially if they decide to go deeper into Europe or launch another spin off that focuses on other survivors outside the usual crew. With the franchise still expanding, there's plenty of room to revisit old comic ideas. And we all know how The Walking Dead likes to play the long game. Some characters are hinted at way before they actually show up. Remember how long it took before we even saw the Commonwealth? They dropped clues seasons before, so maybe that's what's happening here. They're planting seeds for the future, just in case the story ever circles back to Jeffrey in a meaningful way. What would be super interesting is if they didn't just throw Jeffrey into Daryl Dixon, but gave him his own series, or maybe a limited spin off like The Ones Who Live. Imagine a darker, more introspective series where he's surviving in Spain, completely unaware of what happened to Rick. It'd be kind of poetic. Two brothers, both surviving separately, never knowing if the other is alive. That could be powerful if done right. But for now, it's full speed ahead with Daryl and Carol's journey. Season 3 is looking like it'll focus more on building up new characters and pushing Daryl into situations he's never been in before. And honestly, that's exciting and keeps the franchise fresh. And if they ever want to bring back characters like Jeffrey, it'll hit even harder because the audience will already be invested in this new direction. So while Jeffrey Grimes is still on the bench for now, he's definitely not off the team just yet. And who knows, if The Walking Dead keeps growing like it has, there's always a chance we get a crossover down the line that pulls everything together. The franchise has been leaning into that idea lately with The Ones Who Live, so it's not out of the question. If Daryl's storyline ever circles back to the US, or if Rick somehow crosses paths with Carol or someone else from the Spain timeline, it could open the door for all kinds of emotional reunions or new introductions, including, yeah, finally meeting Jeffrey. At the end of the day, it's kind of exciting not knowing exactly where things are going. That unpredictability is a part of what's kept The Walking Dead alive all these years. Whether we get Rick's brother or not, Daryl Dixon Season 3 already sounds like it's going to be a wild ride, packed with intense moments, new faces, and maybe even a few surprises that haven't been teased yet. One thing's for sure, the franchise still has a lot of life left in it, even with half the world dead. But anyway, y'all, I'll see you in the next one.